If you've ever had to deal with a nosy neighbor who doesn't know when to mind their business, you'll get a kick out of this. But before we dive into my tale, don't forget to hit that like button if you can't stand those types of people, and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. It'd be awesome to hear from all over. Anyway, I'm Marcus Taylor, and today I've got a little story about a woman named Geraldine. Now, Geraldine isn't just any neighbor. She's the kind who could probably start a masterclass in how to ruin someone's day. She had a real issue with my car, which, in case you're wondering, is a cherry red Bugatti Chiron. Yeah, a flashy one. I just parked it in front of my place after a crazy day at work. Just saving lives at the local hospital, no big deal. Just another day. But when I got home, there she was, Geraldine, standing in front of her house with that look she always wears, like she just found a hair in her soup. I parked, and she locked eyes with the car like it was the most offensive thing she'd ever seen. Before I could even grab my things from the car, she marched over, all dramatic like, muttering about how my car was a nuisance and an eyesore, and, get this, how it was destroying property values. I could already feel my blood pressure rising. This was so typical of Geraldine. She'd been on my case since I moved in about 6 months ago, complaining about everything from the color of my house to the fact that I dare drive a luxury car. "Good evening, Geraldine," I said, trying my best to stay calm even though my headache was about to explode. "Is there something I can help you with?" She puffed herself up like a peacock and practically sneered at me. "Oh, I'm not just here to complain today, Marcus. I've decided to show you some charity. I'll take that thing off your hands for $1, she said, gesturing at my Bugatti with the most condescending tone I've ever heard. "Excuse me?" I blinked, certain I had misheard her. "This car costs more than your house, Geraldine." "Puffed, probably stolen anyway. But I'm feeling generous, so it's yours for $1. "Take it or leave it," she said, like it was a deal I couldn't refuse. I was ready to fire back with some sarcastic comments when, BM, the car let out a huge backfire, startling both of us. Geraldine shrieked so loud, I thought the windows would shatter. She stumbled back in shock and fell straight into her own rose bushes, thorns and all. She looked like she had just wrestled with a cactus. "Oh, that's it," Geraldine yelled, struggling to get up, her face now bright red and covered in leaves. "I'm calling the police. This guy is clearly up to no good. He stole that car, and now he's terrorizing the neighborhood." I rolled my eyes, resisting the urge to laugh. "Please, Geraldine, calm down," I said, trying to reason with her, though I knew it was a lost cause. "I bought this car legally. I have all the paperwork." "No way," she screeched, already fumbling for her phone. "He's probably a criminal, or worse. I feel unsafe with him around." And just like that, her phone was out, and she dialed 911. "Yes, there's a man in my neighborhood with a stolen vehicle. He's acting suspicious. Send someone right now." She practically shouted. Within minutes, a police car pulled up, siren blaring. 2 officers stepped out, one young officer named Harris and another, older officer named Thompson. They both looked at the scene with confusion. Geraldine wasted no time launching into her dramatic performance, gasping for air like she was about to faint. "Officers," she cried, pointing at me like I was a criminal mastermind. "That man stole that car. He's been harassing me, and I'm terrified." I stood there, watching as Officer Harris approached me, notepad in hand, looking me over carefully. I knew what was coming. Young guy, fancy car, hysterical lady. Yeah, I could see how this looked, but I wasn't about to be judged by her nonsense. "Sir, can you please explain what's going on here?" Officer Harris asked, her voice calm but clearly cautious. I sighed. "My name is Marcus Taylor. That's my car. I have the registration and insurance right here," I said, pulling out my wallet with the documents. Officer Harris took them and started reading, while Officer Thompson stayed back, observing the situation like someone who had seen this play out before. Geraldine kept talking, accusing me of everything from being a con artist to ruining the entire neighborhood. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I tried to stay focused on the officers, hoping they'd see through her act. After what felt like an eternity, Officer Harris handed the papers back. "Everything checks out, Mr. Taylor," she said, though I could see the faintest glimmer of doubt in her eyes. "But do you have any proof of employment? Something to explain how you could afford a car like this?" At this point, I was done. It wasn't my job to explain my finances to anyone, let alone a nosy neighbor and a pair of officers who seemed to think I was up to something. But I also knew how these things worked, and I wasn't going to let stereotypes define me. "Yes, officer," I said, pulling out my phone. "I work as a surgeon. Here's my ID from the hospital, and here's a screenshot of my latest paycheck." Geraldine scoffed loudly, still determined to ruin my day. "Those could be fake. He's a scam artist, I swear." Finally, Officer Thompson had enough. He stepped forward and gave Geraldine a stern look, silencing her in an instant. He didn't buy her act anymore. As I scrolled through my phone to find the documents, I couldn't shake the feeling of frustration building inside me. I worked so hard to get where I was, sacrificed time, sleep, and so much more just to be here. And now, because of one woman's prejudice, I had to justify my success to a couple of strangers who couldn't see beyond their assumptions. Eventually, I found what I needed: a photo of my hospital ID and a screenshot of my paycheck. And that was when I realized, sometimes you really have to fight just to be seen for who you really are, not the story someone else tries to tell about you. I handed my phone to Officer Harris, who inspected it closely. The silence between us grew thicker by the second as she read through the documents. It was like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Finally, she handed my phone back to me, her eyes showing a flicker of surprise. "Mr. Taylor," she said, her tone noticeably softer now, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Everything checks out. It's all legitimate." Officer Thompson gave a nod of agreement, his expression softening as well. "We appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Taylor. We'll be having a word with Ms. Walters," he added, turning toward Geraldine, who was still fuming, muttering angrily under her breath. "Ms. Walters," Officer Thompson's voice took on a stern edge. "Making false reports to emergency services is a serious matter. You need to calm down and stop making unfounded accusations." Geraldine, realizing she had lost the battle, began to backpedal quickly. I was just concerned about the neighborhood," she stammered. "I was only trying to help." But it was too late. Her facade was crumbling. Officer Thompson wasn't buying it. I exhaled slowly, trying to let go of the frustration that had been building since this whole absurd situation started. "Before you leave, officers, I'd like to clear something up for Ms. Walters," I said, a slight grin tugging at the corner of my mouth as I turned toward Geraldine. "She seems to have some misconceptions about what I do for a living." "Ms. Walters," I said, letting the sarcasm drip from my words, "I understand you're curious about how I afford this stolen car." I could see her preparing for another outburst, but I wasn't done yet. "Well, I'm a neurosurgeon at the city hospital. I spend my days saving lives, cutting into brains, and making a difference. So yes, the money's good." I let the words hang in the air for a moment, enjoying the reaction. "And no," I added, "I didn't steal the car." Geraldine stood there, completely speechless. Her face turned pale as the weight of her mistake settled in. She looked like someone who had just realized they were in way too deep and had no idea how to climb out. Her eyes flickered nervously between me and the officers, but she couldn't quite formulate a response to her own prejudice. Officer Harris tried to hold back a smile, clearly enjoying the shift in power. Officer Thompson, however, remained stoic, though I could see the slightest amusement in his eyes. "Yes, Ms. Walters," I pressed, relishing in the moment. "I'm a neurosurgeon, a homeowner, a taxpayer, just like you. The difference is, unlike you, I don't spend my time harassing my neighbors with false accusations based on their race." The words seemed to hang heavy in the air. Geraldine, her entire narrative crumbling, stood there, eyes wide and unfocused. The officers exchanged glances, both of them silently acknowledging her unraveling story. Finally, Officer Thompson stepped forward and spoke to Geraldine. "Ms. Walters," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we're letting you off with a warning this time. But if we receive any more complaints about you harassing your neighbors, we'll take further action. Do you understand?" Geraldine barely nodded, her eyes fixed on the ground. "Yes, officer," she muttered, the words barely escaping her lips. As the police car pulled away, I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about gloating, it was about justice. Geraldine had tried to use her privilege to intimidate me, to make me feel like I didn't belong here. But now, she was the one facing the consequences. I watched as Geraldine retreated back in her house, her shoulders slumped, her once pristine floral dress now looking wilted and tired, just like her reputation. I knew this wouldn't erase her prejudices overnight, but hopefully it would serve as a lesson in the dangers of jumping to conclusions and in treating others with respect. And maybe, just maybe, it would teach her that karma has a way of catching up when you least expect it. I turned back to my car, feeling a renewed sense of appreciation for Buttercup. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of all the hard work I had put in to get where I am today. The struggles, the sleepless nights, the sacrifice. It wasn't just about having something flashy. It was about refusing to let anyone else's narrow view of me define my success. That evening, I settled into the quiet comfort of my home. For a moment, I thought about ordering a pizza with pineapple, just to mess with Geraldine a little more. I didn't do it, but the thought was tempting. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but smile. Geraldine had tried to take away my pride for $1, but in the end, she paid a much higher price for her own prejudice. The next morning, as I opened my front door, I found a small, wilted bouquet of roses sitting on my doorstep. No note, no explanation, just a silent, yet oddly fitting gesture. Maybe even someone like Geraldine could learn a thing or two after all.